to the same conclusion independently, which was 1 mind over matter was the amount. And now I see Alix Hatfield is down to 1 mind over matter.
And there we go. And for those of you just joining us, I'm Gavin Verhey. I'm here in the booth with Adrian Sullivan, and we're about to cover some legacy between Alix Hatfield and David Sharfman. Both players playing their old standby decks they've had a lot of success with it. Alix Hatfield on the right is playing High Tide, the Star City Games Edison Open champion, one with a very similar deck list. Pretty much, I think it's almost 75 cards identical. The only major difference I see is one in Intuition, which you can Merchant Scroll for to go find 3 time spirals.
And that one Intuition is so critical, honestly.
Yeah.
Like, having played High Tide a million trillion times in the past, having Merchant Scroll for Intuition is an incredible option for your deck.
And you can also Cunning Wish for an Intuition as well. There's one in the sideboard. As far as David Sharfman, also playing an old standby deck. He's playing Goblins, a deck that he won an Open Series with last year. And he knows how to play the deck really well. He's just coming fresh off of a top 8 in Standard, playing a blue-white Venser deck with Wall of Omens and Seagate Oracles and Contagion Clasps and Tumble Magnets and 9 Planeswalkers. And so he's got some momentum in his favor. A classic Goblins versus Combo battle. We'll see who wins this one. Traditionally, Combo is the favorite, but High Tide is one of the slower Combo decks. So we'll see what happens.
You know, looking at the sideboards, just looking ahead, one of the things that this Goblin deck has, besides Pyroblast, it only has a few Pyroblasts, it has Mindbreak Trap. Mindbreak Trap ×3 going into the time spirals that his opponent has. It's just going to be really powerful.
Yeah, Alix is going to have to play around those Mindbreak Traps. I mean, it's a card that some Goblins decks have, but it's really hard to play around. You have to build up, and you don't have that kind of time against Goblins. So,
looks like David Sharfman is on the play.
Yep. And cracks Bloodstained Mire. And here we go. We're off to the races with our legacy coverage. Standard is in the books, and now it's time to go fetch up some dual lands. The olden days are in the past. And there's a lackey. The ominous turn 1 play from Goblins heralds doom.
Force of Will.
Yep.
Well and happily played.
Yeah, Alix knows you have to force that. The lackey will just put so many Goblins into play so fast. Whenever it hits a player, you get to put a Goblin into play. He
tosses a High Tide to make that Force of Will happen. He does have a Turnabout in his hand,
yeah,
which he can use in this matchup like a Cryptic Command to tap down his opponent's army if he needs to when he's not ready to go off yet.
Right, and there's a vial for David Sharfman. So I can't see what's in Alix's hand perfectly, but by pitching that High Tide, I think he's probably got to have another way to get it. I see a Merchant Scroll sitting there.
One
so
thing
he can
to
definitely
note,
scroll.
too, if he's going on a turn 2 Aether Vial, a Goblin deck can explode into action really, really quickly.
Right.
But this is the critical turn here. Okay, there we go. That's a card that he really wants to see right now in order to put on the sufficient kind of pressure to make Alix be in harder shape. I totally agree with that. Getting that off the table means that he's got a long, long time before he's going to have to actually worry about dying.
Right, and now Alix has a ton of time. He's got a Brainstorm he can use. I think he still has that Merchant Scroll. Okay, so is this an end-step Brainstorm for Alix Hatfield? That's curious. A lot of players will go for end-step Brainstorm, and typically it's actually correct to go Brainstorm main phase. You see a card deeper. You know, I think Adam Prozac called main phase Brainstorm, or sorry, end-step Brainstorm the worst play in Legacy. But Alix is a player who knows what he's doing when it comes to Legacy, so I'll trust him on this one. Oh, it was main phase. He did pass. He did pass the turn. Okay.
Yeah, in these powerful formats, one of the things about Brainstorm is you can just find main phase plays that are so potent that not waiting around can be a huge deal.
Yeah, and so yeah, Alix did that right. He went for the main phase Brainstorm, crack a fetch land to shuffle. And are we gonna see Merchant Scroll here? Not sure. And okay, he's gonna ponder. Let's see.
Can't quite make any of those out. I saw a blue card and an island, I think.
Pondering once upon a midnight dreary.
I see a Candelabra of Tawnos, I believe. In his hand, I mean.
Yeah, he's got a Candelabra.
Leaves them there, draws a card. Says go.
Yep. Val kicks up to 2 counters.
a lot of time here. Goblins can explode so quickly, but you know what? If it doesn't have a lackey, if it doesn't have a war chief on the table, it's just going to come out much, much slower. And is that a chieftain?
I think that's a Goblin Chieftain, the new Goblin. And there's Mog War Marshal, turning that into a sizable threat. So that serves in for 2, 4, 6 out of nowhere.
Yep.
Dropping Alix down to 11 life. So once again, out of nowhere, just 6 damage just like that. But now I think David Sharfman is out of cards. And, oh no, he's got 1 or 2 cards left there. Yeah, just 1.
1 card. A pile driver coming out would kill Alix next turn.
Right.
But most other cards would not result in Alix's dying.
I mean, the +1/+1 in haste is certainly an issue, but...
Now, it's worth noting that getting a pile driver is not actually all that hard. He can bring that up to 3, matron for pile driver, or if he already has a pile driver in his hand, just put a pile driver out again with the Aether Vial.
He can also go for ringleader, flip a pile driver, put it into play off Aether Vial if he doesn't kick it up.
Yeah.
So he's got some options.
Meanwhile, looking at Alix's hand, he appears to be contemplating whether he can afford to go off at this point. And speaking of high tide, I'm not sure if you caught it earlier, Gavin getting pretty worried about his lack of water.
Yeah, my water situation. I mean, there's a lot of water on Alix's Hatfield side of the board, but
right.
I needed a high tide of my own. And
Jared Silva
Jared Silva came through with another case of water for me. So
they actually literally bring more water when Gavin's on his way.
Like Adrian Sullivan, I don't think has had any water, and we're through an entire case, and we're just starting day 2. So that should give you an idea of how much water I drink. I think I chugged an entire water bottle on camera in one slurp yesterday.
You did.
Yeah. So let's see what we got going on here. Alix is a very deliberate player, and he's got to figure out how he's going to fight his way out of this one. He knows that David could kill him shortly, so...
He says go.
Yeah, I mean, so he said go. David kicked up Aether Vial, let the Mog War Marshal die, tried to pull something. I think I see an Incinerator in his hand.
Taps 3. Puts a free chief into play. In they come.
Yeah. And
Not enough to kill Alix.
3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Alix sitting at 2 life.
I would predict like a Cunning Wish or an
Yeah,
Intuition at end of turn.
Wish.
There it is.
Gabe Lanciano points out that I'm a water monster. I prefer the term water vampire because I just leave the bottles scattered around, husks of their former selves. Sometimes I pinprick the edges, breaking them open. And Alix goes to his sideboard looking for what he's going to get. Shoves Turnabout to the front.
At the top of the front, yeah.
So Turnabout would buy him a turn if he's able to cast it.
I think he's going to go for the win.
I think
he's got High Tide, Turnabout, Time Spiral.
Yep, I think you have to go for it. David Sharfman is now like, all right, this is time to sit back and watch.
One of the great cards that was printed for High Tide is Blue Sun Zenith, which basically serves the purposes of being the first and second stroke of genius that High Tide used to run, all in one single copy.
Yep, and there's the High Tide to start off the combos.
Tide is at 2.
So now Alex Hatfield's Island's all tap for 2 mana.
Well, you don't know how much this warms my heart seeing this deck playing.
Oh yeah, High Tide was my first Legacy deck. I love this deck. I played Springtide back in the day, and this deck isn't too far off. And now he's got to figure out what his next play is. So he's got that Candelabra. He's got a Merchant Scroll he can go find High Tide with.
Turnabout.
Right, Turnabout, untap all my islands.
0 mana floating, access to 6.
Yep. Now I think we're going to see Merchant Scroll. So 2 Merchant Scrolls and a Candelabra in Alex's hand. So I think we're going to see Merchant Scroll here. I haven't done the math. I don't know if Alex can make enough mana to use that Candelabra of Tawnos so that he can play Merchant Scroll, get Intuition, and find Time Spiral. There's Intuition art shuffled right to the front. Is that what he's looking for? How much can he make? 4? No, I think it's just High Tide here. Yeah, he goes
There
for the
it
High
is.
Tide.
Another
So
tide.
if he goes for the High Tide, then he can play Candelabra and High Tide there, tap all three, untap all of his lands, get 9. You go Merchant Scroll down to 7, get Intuition. That only leaves him with 4 left after that.
Tide again.
Yep.
3 mana per island now.
So I think you have to go for maybe Meditate on the next Merchant Scroll. So now he's going to untap all of his lands.
Candelabra.
Go to, all right, so there's no mana floating. He has access to 9, so he's going to keep 1 floating now. And I think Meditate is the card you get here. Meditate. What's he getting?
Alex,
Yep, Meditate.
Meditate.
Main event stage, please. Alex Flynn to the main event stage. Your next round of your Winnabox is ready for you. Alex Flynn.
So there's the Meditate, and Alex has to draw off this Meditate. Now granted, his deck is full of cards he could draw here that are pretty effective. He could draw any way to untap, plus Ponder, Preordain, any way to untap, plus Time Spiral. Numerous cards you could find.
He's really reaching here. He's got lots of opportunities to come out of this.
Right.
But this is like, please work.
Yep, it's all hidden on the top of his deck right now.
Meditate. 4 cards. It's a lot of cards.
All right, let's see what he finds. 1, 2, 3, 4. Quad
there they are.
lasers. Here we go. Island, Candelabra, Blue Sun, Zenith. Oh, that's a good start. I couldn't see what the 4th card is, but those are 3 good ones on their own. And a Brainstorm. Okay, so I think that's pretty much what he's looking for.
He has not laid a land this turn.
And you can play that land too, which will give him an extra 3 mana. So he Brainstorms with the mana floating.
See a turnabout.
Oh wow, I think he's got
Cunning
it now.
Wish.
Cunning Wish, Turnabout. I think Alex has got this one now. Yeah.
Land. Turnabout. Oh, Candelabra.
Untap them all.
Untap it.
Okay, now I'm pretty sure Alex is going through the motions at this point. He's got Meditate, Turnabout in his hands.
Can add 12 mana to his pool right now. Turnabout, go to 8 and add 12 more for 20.
That's a lot of mana. Well, I think we'll see him Meditate first. Yeah. Oh, he chooses the Turnabout.
Untapping the Candelabras might actually be
Oh,
mana at this
wow.
point. Boom.
Yeah.
There
How
we
about
go.
that? Untap all the Candelabras. So now, oh, and we know he's got a Blue Sun Zenith on the top of his library, right?
Yeah, I believe so.
So how much mana can Alix Hatfield create? The answer is a lot. Another Turnabout, another Candelabra.
Oh, boy.
I think this might be a lethal. Let's see, all of his islands tap for 3. How many cards are in David Sharfman's deck? I mean, 60 is obviously the correct
Yes.
answer, but how many are left in his deck?
I thought about being snarky and
4,
saying
8.
60, but
I think there are 48 cards left in his deck. Can he? I don't think he can get to blue for 48, but he can target himself, draw a bunch of cards, and kill him. Should have it here. All right, yeah. There's
Candelabra.
Candelabra number 3, and you see why the card is currently a $200 card. Yeah.
Candelabra.
Candelabra. It's making
again.
all that mana. Time to Blue Sun Zenith, draw a bunch of cards.
Turnabout his Candelabras if he wants.
Oh man, I have no idea how much mana is in his pool right now.
Yeah, I lost track
I
at a
don't
certain
think it's
point.
going to be lethal on David, but he's going to be able to draw so many cards it's not going to matter. I guess you could go Cunning Wish for
Each Candelabra is making him 8 mana. So that was just 8, 16, 24, down to 20. And then he can make another 24 for 44, and then tap what he's got there. I think he's got a lethal stroke, actually.
Okay. Yeah, so he goes Cunning Wish for Turnabout, which is fair play, and
Or Cunning Wish for whatever.
to untap his lands, right?
He can...
Or just Brain Freeze.
Yeah, I mean, he might just do the brain freeze to see the library, right?
I
See
guess
what's
we could
there.
do it the easy way. I thought he'd make him draw his whole deck, but no. Have to go for the Brain Freeze route. And as long as David Sharfman doesn't have an Emrakul Aeon's Torn in his deck, which turns out he doesn't.
I mean, there's some scratches, but I don't see an Emrakul.
No, I don't see any Lava Darts either.
Oh, Lava Dart. That would be, oh man.
What a beating! I mean, that was something people did back in the day. Was you'd go Brain Freeze, and they'd be like in like the Heartbeat decks, and they would have Lava Dart. Now I'm just playing carefully, but David Sharfman never meant to concede before he needs to. But yeah, he's counting up how many cards are left in his library. Brain freezes him for, let's see, looks like storm count is 6, 12, 15. David makes sure it's lethal. Doesn't want to show Alex his library if he doesn't have to, and yeah, he just picks up his cards.
There we go.
So that's that. So Alex Hatfield takes the first game over David Sharfman. High Tide looked like his backing goes against the wall, had to draw the right cards off and meditate, but his deck is full of enough redundancy. He was able to get there.
Right. This is one of the powers of Meditate. You know, like, I was poo-pooing Meditate a little bit last night when we were talking about High Tide, but 4 cards is a lot of cards, particularly when you're talking about a deck with 4 Brainstorms, 4 Ponder, 2 Preordain, Merchant Scroll, Cunning Wish. I mean, this deck is just a bunch of search and then some crazy card advantage.
So,
plus mana.
So obviously not a lot of sideboarding happens here for Alex Hatfield. He has a wish board, so he doesn't have a ton of options. But David Sharfman has some interesting cards in his sideboard: Mindbreak Trap, Pyroblast. What do you think comes in, and more importantly, what do you think comes out?
Okay, well, one of the things that's really important for the red deck, right? You've got only 2 Pyroblasts. 2 Pyroblasts is not very many, and so what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to bring those in definitely, as well as the Mindbreak Traps, which are specifically set up for the combo matchup. Also on the sideboard is access to a Goblin Chieftain and Boartusk Liege. Now, Chieftain you actually saw used to great effect to incredibly increase the potential damage that came out of the Mogg War Marshal. The Mogg War Marshal, if it had been just, and I say just in quotes, a Goblin War Chief, it would have just been 2 more damage. But because it was a Chieftain that was on the table, that ended up being 4 more damage. So the Chieftain, I imagine, will likely come in. The question of a card like Boartusk Liege, which is slower, might also be of value just because Boartusk Liege can do the similar thing with increasing the clock. Finally, Tormod's Crypt, again, might be a card to blunt the power of the Time Spiral, but you're already bringing in Pyroblast and Mindbreak Traps. The more you do with cards like Tormod's Crypt or things like that, the more you cease to become a Goblins deck. So my expectation here actually is that it's going to be 2 Pyroblasts, 3 Mindbreak Traps, and a Goblin Chieftain. And what'll come out almost certainly is 2 Warren Weirdings. And now you've got to find room for 4 more cards. 4 Gem Palm Incinerators seems like the obvious choice. Once you get rid of those, you might even have, with that Goblin Sharpshooter on the side, room for a Boartusk Liege as that last card. Now, conversely, Alex Hatfield, he's basically just looking to have the initial parts of his game not fall apart when it comes to a Goblin taking him out. And he's got a bunch of singletons in his sideboard that are largely there for Cunning Wish targets. So one of the first questions you have to ask yourself when it comes to Cunning Wish targets, which of these cards are cards that I wouldn't mind drawing, but I don't want to tutor for? And those are cards that you're probably going to board in. So an example card like that is Intuition. You're probably not going to Cunning Wish for Intuition unless you're at a position where you are sitting pretty with a lot of mana. So Intuition might come in. Most of the rest of these cards that are in the sideboard, I don't actually expect to see those come in. So the question then is the Repeals and the Pact of Negations. Repeal is largely there for single answers, like a Pyrostatic Pillar, things like that you just have to get off the table. So I expect that Alex Hatfield is not going to do too much to change the makeup of his deck. He might bring in, say, 2 Pact of Negations and that Intuition, maybe, and in exchange take out some of the cards that are a little bit slower and more ponderous, like Mind Over Matter. We'll have to see what happens, though, when we get to this matchup playing itself out. Alex looking around right now, trying to see if he had dropped anything, but he looks like his deck is intact, in fact. David Sharfman, we saw last night, David making the top 8 of the standard portion of the event, and David was playing the very innovative blue-white Contagion class-based Planeswalker deck. Ben Weinberg's walking by over here. How you doing, Ben?
I'm good. Watching Alex play some High Tide so I can get some lessons.
Right. What are you playing today?
Like 74 of his 75.
Okay, so you were also playing High Tide.
Yes. There was a copy available, and I feel the deck's very powerful.
Okay, the word on the street from Gavin is that Evan Irwin lost playing Burn against. Oh, Evan changed to Merfolk? Okay, interesting. Last night he was talking about Burn.
Yeah, he won 2-2 yesterday in the Legacy Challenge with Burn.
Okay, we've got the opening, the Goblin Lackey, and it is not stopped by Force of Will. This is going to be a radically different game then for Alix, who last game was able to Force of Will that Goblin Lackey, and this time he's going to have to really, really go off quickly, because that Lackey is going to translate into really quick damage.
A lot of pressure, especially if he has like a follow-up like Power Driver.
So clearly, if you are playing Time Spiral, you have to think that it's worth playing here.
That was real good for Alix, but knowing he has Mindbreak Trap is not fortunate.
We see a ringleader come off of the Goblin Lackey there, making itself show very few cards that David Sharfman wanted Alix to see. Mindbreak Trap is a lot of information.
Yeah, I saw Alix was thinking about putting Pact Negation in his deck for Game 2 because of Mindbreak Trap, but he ended up not bringing it in.
Brainstorm. Pretty full hand. I don't know if I see very much mana in that hand, though.
I think there's just the one Misty Rainforest.
Untap. Draws back one of those Brainstorm cards. Lays the land, sacrifices it immediately, and probably is going to follow up here with a Ponder or a Preordain would be my guess. So you must definitely think if you're getting on Alix Hatfield's deck choice that High Tide is a better call than you've traditionally been playing.
Like
Counterbalance
or Threshold decks. Like I think like this is a good week to play because Counterbalance isn't being played as much, and I think once Counterbalance is back in power, you don't want to play this deck.
Right. Alix Hatfield passes the turn, going to David Sharfman, who comes in attacking for 4. He has access to Rishadan Port now to really cause some problems, and that looks like an Echoing Truth.
Right.
That's a great thing for Alix to use to bounce those lackeys. Now, this is one of those singletons I was telling you about that you don't have time to tutor for, and so you just bring it in because you know you're going to get value out of it.
Right. And you still have like a snap in the sideboard if you need to like bounce creature, and you have White Boy too. So.
I'd be willing to bet that he probably has the snap in the main at this point.
Maybe. That Echoing Truth definitely put David in an awkward spot because now he has to reapply pressure and he can't use his port as effectively.
And he uses it to make a post-combat, is that a Chieftain?
I believe so. He can no longer play it for free.
Force of Will. And this Force of Will is being played here largely just to make the clock slow. Every turn that Alix gets to sit means that he gets to put another potential island into play, which is a huge deal.
Right. And like
there's a Brainstorm.
Yeah. And all the 3-drops are important for goblins because like they all give haste to all your other goblins. And that speeds up the clock. Are there any High Tides in there or not? I can't tell.
I see Turnabout, Turnabout. It looks like 2 lands.
Probably a Merchant Scroll, I think.
Can't.
Hard to tell.
Can't quite get there. That's a Merchant Scroll, and I think I see a Time Spiral at the very back.
Okay.
Land, Merchant Scroll, going for the High Tide if he doesn't already have it. I didn't quite see all the cards in his hand. I think it's a High Tide, though.
Yep.
There it is, High Tide. Now that Rishadan port does mean that it could take a little smidge longer if David wants to have that be his plan. Now, if he does do that kind of disruption, he's putting out a pretty weak Kalak.
Right. I mean, he could play like a Lackey and then port, but like he's not in a good spot right now, and I don't see any blue cards in his hand.
Now, of course, Sharfman does have access to Pyroblasts, and Alix is aware that goblins can play a Pyroblast, so playing around a card like Pyroblast is probably something that Alix is definitely thinking about.
Yeah. But if you see Mindbreak Trap, do you really expect Pyroblast as well?
I think so. I mean, like, why not play both? If you're a Goblin deck and you want to have those anti-combo cards like Mindbreak Trap, Pyroblast is still the best sideboard card probably ever.
Well, what about Cabal Therapy, though? Like, isn't that card pretty good, too? Like, could you have those instead?
That's a possibility, but I think it's hard to walk away from a card that's so powerful.
Okay.
So now we've got access with another land to both Goblin Lackeys and access to that port to shut down an island for a turn. And David just wants to try to stall Alix for just one more turn, 2 more turns. Hope that he doesn't have enough land to make that high tide make things happen. And one of the problems, of course, high tide is an instant. You tap an island,
Yep.
just can get used right
I mean,
away.
sometimes you can mess up their math if you have like 2 ports. Like if they tap one, they float a mana,
Yeah.
then like they cast High Tide, you can tap another land in response. But
That's the -1 on the mana, which does do a little bit of work.
right.
Candelabra. And he's under no pressure here to have to go off. He's not going to die this next turn. Tap your lands.
Players, I just need one more player to fill up
Untap
a $10
two.
booster draft. Just one more player to fill up a $10 booster draft.
Here comes the team. 4 damage, knocking Alix down to 9, and getting a couple triggers off of it. Is that a ringleader?
Yep.
Mindbreak Trap.
And some spells.
It looks
Goblin
like
Matron's pretty
Matron.
good.
Yeah. And I think I saw a War Marshal and a Chieftain.
I think it was
Or
a
War
Chief.
Chief?
It was a
War
War
Chief.
Chief. Which is much better than his first ringleader.
That first ringleader was disappointing.
Yep.
Second trigger. And what is he putting into play there? There we go. And
Another-
that is,
A War Chief.
yep. Spends a couple more mana. Matron.
Probably a pile driver here.
He's now threatening for the kill for the coming turn. No ifs, ands, or buts. He's got a Siege Gang Commander at the top of his hand there, looks like. Basically kind of viewing that, like, if that Lackey hits, the Siege Gang can finish it off.
Yep.
The other options he has, what else? I think he might have shifted it down to the bottom.
Maybe he just wants another hasted creature?
He goes with Siege Gang. It looked like he was also debating perhaps another hasty guy, but...
Yeah. He has made his choice. And it's not like Alix is safe even when he goes off because David does have Mindbreak Trap in his deck
Yeah,
for the big blowout.
absolutely.
Players in $10 booster draft number 3, we are now full. Come on up and see Judge Zach go get started. Players in $10 booster draft number 3, come on up to the main event stage.
Now Gavin's back in the booth.
Yeah.
Adrian is on break.
Yep. Ran the old switcheroos. Megan Holland delivered a savior-like subway run.
Oh,
So,
very nice.
well played. It's really interesting seeing these two decks battle it out.
Yes. Yeah, I'm actually watching Alix because I'm playing like 73 out of his 75.
Yeah, I heard you go up to Jerry Thompson last night and ask him, so I'm playing High Tide tomorrow. I haven't play tested at all. How do you play this deck?
Yeah.
It seems like a poor time to be asking for advice, but
Well,
you're a pretty accomplished player.
Right, like I know
so.
what's going on, but I figured he might have learned some tricks and like he's played the deck a little more.
Yeah. Well,
This turn we probably have to go off because we're under a lot of pressure, or have the turnabout on David's turn.
I like going off here. And David Sharfman's going to try and tap down that island in response.
Yep.
Alix floats a blue.
Was that another high tide, or was that the same high tide?
I thought I saw him have 2 High Tides in his hand, but I wasn't totally
Yeah,
sure.
it had to be.
I think it might have High Tided twice. Let's see.
Alex Karen, come on up to the main event stage for your $10 draft. Alex Karen, come on up to the main event stage for your $10 draft.
Alex pretty worried about a Mind Break Trap at this point, but does David have it? He throws it onto the table like, shrug, do you have it? Nope. So, but the problem is, of course, is David gets to draw 7 fresh cards, so there's a pretty good chance to see a Mind Break Trap here.
Like if he hits 1, and if he hits 2, it's just like so bad for Alex.
Yeah. Yeah, 1 trap is bad news, double trap is super bad news.
Yep.
We'll see what happens. So as a high tide player, like, what are some of the most important things you can see off of time spiral after it resolves in this situation?
More high tides because he only has 3 lands, and like you just want to like continue having like the chain features like turnabouts, candelabras going off. He probably wants a Cunning Wish here so he can get a Pact of Negation to stop the Mind Break Trap.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, Cunning Wish seems really important. And if you go Cunning Wish to get Mind Break or to get a Pact of Negation, like if he has to Mind Break Trap the Cunning Wish, that's fine because he just makes the Mind Break
That's
Trap.
the same thing.
Yeah, and you don't have to pay 5 in your next upkeep.
Right, and one nice thing out going for Scotland too is like you can go with the Brain Freeze kill, or a lot of decks like you're not sure if they have an Outdraws, you're not a Progenitus, like the green decks because they could board into the natural order plan. So then Brain Freeze isn't a kill, and you have to go off with a Blue Sun Zenith.
Right. Yeah, I mean, game 1 we saw Alix Brain Freeze David out, but after sideboarding, he might be a little more hesitant too. Goblins isn't a deck that traditionally runs reshuffling cards, but you never know.
Yeah.
Especially with High Tide's popularity.
High Tide is a lot of fun.
Do you have 2 buys?
I do have 2 buys.
That's pretty fortunate.
Yes, it is very nice. I need to start putting them in better use though.
Mainly from last season?
Yeah. I'm up to 41 points this year, so I'm in good shape to at least get level 5, 6, 7 this year. But I really want to get level 8, ideally.
So let's see. 7 cards for Alix Hatfield, and 7 cards for David Sharfman. I don't see any blue cards in David Sharfman's hand.
Yeah.
So could turn out well for Alix.
I saw a Brainstorm, but then it's really hard to see his hand.
Yeah, I think I saw High Tide. Looks like Merchant Scroll, a couple High Tides.
We got a 4th land.
Double Turnabout.
Yeah, the
I
game.
think there's a Meditate.
I think it's 2 turnabouts, 2 High Tides, a land, and a Merchant Scroll.
Right. So there's a High Tide.
Right. One issue with this hand is it doesn't have
Another High Tide.
Mind Break Trap protection.
Yeah. So I mean, fortunately for Alix, David didn't draw it. But in a slightly different situation, this could have gone really badly for Alix. But as it looks like right now, I think Alix is really far ahead. Let's see. He's got Meditate he's looking at. Pick up 4 cards. And you really want to not time spiral a bunch of times here, because the more times you time spiral, the more likely it is he's going to draw Mind Break Trap. So he's looking for other avenues.
Yep.
So there's an island.
Yeah, we'll probably meditate here just to draw 4 cards, see what's up.
Yeah, that way you can kind of craft your hand better once you know what's going on, and then you can Merchant Scroll for whatever missing piece you might need. Get your Blue Sun Zenith or what have you.
Yeah. I mean, I guess, could he like Merchant Scroll for Zenith with all the mana he has floating? But
Alright, yeah, Meditate first. Force, so he did draw a Force, which would be useful. It makes it so he doesn't have to really play around Mind Break Trap
and he has the
anymore.
Cunning Wish too for like double Mind Break Trap protection if he needs it.
Yeah. So, I mean, Alex seems like he's pretty much got this one on lock.
Yep.
Just a matter of going through the motions and making sure you don't mess it up. The deck is pretty complicated, so.
It is.
And Alex smiling.
Yeah.
All right, taps with a bunch of mana. Turnabout, untap all my lands.
Make either 12 or 16 mana, depending on how many high tides we have.
And it looks like he drew Blue Sun Zenith. Okay, there's a Cunning Wish. I'm not sure if he drew Zenith or not. That might have been the wish. But what's he gonna get? What's he gonna get? Intuition. Or no, Meditate. And there's a Meditate. Draw 4 more cards. Skip my next 2 turns. Won't need those turns. Thank you very much.
Right. Those turns are pretty relevant. If he has to pass a turn, he lost the game.
Yeah. Pretty. Exactly. And Sharfman trying to bluff the counter, asking, making Alex wait, asking how many cards in hand, but he knows and we know that there's nothing he can do here. If he had the Mind Break Trap, it would have been spent a long time ago on that last Meditate.
Yep. Another Force of Will.
Yep. So now we're pretty much stocked up.
And we're probably close to the storm count needed for Brain Freeze at this point.
Yeah. The only question is if Alex is going to go for the Brain Freeze kill or decide to make sure he dexes David with the Zenith.
Right.
Have all 4 High Tides been cast at this point, or is there still one left?
Well, they shuffle back in. Like, it's either tapping for 3 or 4 mana that lands. I'm not sure.
Oh, right. They shuffle back in. So.
Yeah.
And those
Like, I noticed on his life pad, like, he has a High Tide counter along with his mana and storm count. That way you can keep track of it better.
The ultimate combo life bed. All right,
Yeah.
so Merchant Scroll. What did you change from your list from Alex's?
Like, I have an extra wipe away or in the sideboard, I think. I think the main deck's the exact same. I got the Snap, which seems pretty sweet.
Snap. Perkle's Recall. Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty close to the same deck. I don't want to change it without having tested the matchups.
Right.
And he obviously knows what he's doing. Oh,
Yeah.
we got another Meditate.
Yeah. A lot of meditation happening here. Your deck looks very nice. I'm looking through it right now.
Yeah, I
All
borrowed
kinds
it
of-
from Eli, who likes to have his foreign cards and lends out lots of decks.
Yeah. Very pretty.
Yeah, there was someone who was talking about playing the deck, but he was convinced to go draft open today and let me play the deck.
Wow, how fortunate for you.
Yep. Yeah, otherwise I was going to play Canadian Threshold or Affinity.
Like Tezzeret Affinity or
Yeah,
traditional Affinity?
Tezzeret Affinity. And then I played versus Caleb Durwood, who's playing like a Bant Stoneforge Mystic deck, and it was just crushing me, so I decided it was not the right call.
When your Affinity deck loses to Stoneforge Mystic, it's like, no, we're not going to let this happen.
Right.
So Alex goes get gets a High Tide off of Merchant Scroll. Now all his islands tap for some exorbitant amount of mana.
Yep.
A ludicrously high amount. And now he's doing some math. And 3, 4, 5. Double Force, Turnabout, all sitting in Alex's hand.
Pondering, can't tell what we got.
Yeah, big mysteries. He draws it, whatever it is, Brainstorm. Looks like Force, Merchant Scroll, something else. He's going to shove 2 lands back into his deck. Really is a work of art watching Alex play this deck. I mean, he knows how to play it so well,
Yep.
and seeing how all the decisions are made.
Yeah, I imagine here it's Cunning Wish for Brain Freeze at this point.
Let's see what he goes for. Nope, High
More
Tide.
High Ties.
He's like, I think I have the win with Blue Sun Zenith. I'm not going to risk losing to Emrakul or some shenanigans.
Yeah, some shuffle fatty, like.
Anything, yeah. Gaia's Blessing, I don't know, whatever the kids are doing these days.
Yep.
So, let's see.
We still have a turnabout left to like get exorbitant amounts of mana too.
Huh.
Oh, and a Candelabra.
Yeah, I mean, Alix has so much mana right now. I'm pretty sure he can deck David Sharfman. All right, there's Candelabra, taps, untaps.
Turnabout our Candelabras make more mana.
Oh yeah, when you start, the fact that you can turnabout to untap all your Candelabras is just ridiculous.
Right.
It's like,
Pretty absurd.
I don't think a lot of people realize that interaction, but turnabout lets you untap artifacts
Right.
in addition to lands and creatures.
Yeah, and I saw one point in like a High Tide Mirror match, like someone floated all their mana with a Candelabra in play, and then it's like, I'll turnabout your artifacts instead, just to force them to be tapped out either way.
Yeah, I think that was Jerry on
Yeah.
camera. I watched him do that. That's pretty impressive.
Yep.
All right, Alix untapping more. Taps, untaps.
Cunning Wish.
Cunning Wish. Blue Sun Zenith.
Kill you.
Would you like some cards, sir? How do some cards sound?
Maybe I'll draw my own cards first.
And in a 47 for 1, Alix manages the win.
Yep. It's pretty fun. Like, yeah, when you get going, like, and you, like, he had what, 5 High Tides going there, you know, like
Yeah,
making